Imagine a thief pulling off the biggest robbery in Japan's history without using any violence. Everyone who heard the story called it the smartest heist in the world. And we're not talking about something small. This man stole 300 million yen in cash, without weapons, without a chase. The most fascinating part is how he pulled it, as the police investigation later revealed. This video is going to be a lot of fun, so grab a drink, some snacks, and let's dive in. Hello everyone. For those seeing me for the first time, I'm Elon, and I share stories about everything strange and mysterious on our planet. Before we start today's story, you should know I first heard about it from a channel called Robbers IQ. After verifying all the details, I decided to share it with you because, honestly, it's an amazing one. Our story takes place in Japan in 1968. At that time, Japan was experiencing an economic boom. The whole world was going through a technological revolution, and Japan was leading the way. This prosperity meant the banks were full of money, making them a prime target for criminals. There were many robberies, but one stood out as the largest and most brilliant. It all began when the manager of Nihon Trust Bank received a letter at his home mailbox. The letter came from an anonymous sender demanding 300 million yen at a specific location, or his house would be blown up. The manager panicked, and soon after, another letter arrived at his office with the same threat. He immediately called the police. From then on, letters continued arriving regularly at both his home and office. The police placed the bank and the manager's house under surveillance, fearing the threat might be real. The manager also held a staff meeting to warn employees to stay alert. A few days later, on December 10th, 1968, the bank was scheduled to deliver 300 million yen to Toshiba Company. The money was meant for year-end bonuses, and the company wanted it in cash. The manager assigned 4 employees to transport the money. They placed the cash in 3 large cases, loaded them into a car, and headed toward Toshiba's office in Tokyo. On the way, they were stopped by a policeman on a motorcycle. He told them the bank manager's house had just been bombed, with injuries and casualties reported. He added that there might be explosives planted in bank vehicles as well, so he needed to inspect their car. The employees were terrified, especially when smoke suddenly started coming from beneath the vehicle. Believing it was a bomb about to explode, they abandoned the car and ran for cover. Moments later, one of them peeked out, only to find the car and the policeman gone. On the ground remained only the motorcycle and a smoke flare. That's when they realized the shocking truth. The man wasn't a policeman at all. He was a thief who tricked them, stole the car, and vanished with the exact 300 million yen mentioned in the threatening letters. The police were called in immediately. At the scene, they found the abandoned motorcycle. It wasn't even a real police bike, but carefully modified to look like one. Employees confirmed the thief's uniform was also a perfect police disguise. The investigation that followed became the biggest in Japanese history. Over 10,000 officers were deployed across Tokyo. Roadblocks were set up everywhere, but the thief was one step ahead. The stolen car was later found abandoned in a cemetery, showing he had switched to another vehicle and escaped before roadblocks were in place. The robbery dominated headlines. People were astonished, not just by the massive amount stolen, but also by how cleverly it was done without harming anyone. Police sketches were drawn based on witness descriptions. Over 750,000 images were distributed nationwide. At one point, 110,000 people were listed as suspects. More than 170,000 officers were involved in the case, and the investigation cost 900 million yen, 3 times the amount stolen. Authorities justified the expense by saying they had to prove the strength of Japan's security system to prevent future crimes of this scale. The focus narrowed down to just 3 suspects. The first was the bank manager. The police didn't directly accuse him, but there was a lot of talk that he might be the mastermind. After all, the money transfer to Toshiba was supposed to be secret, and only he, a few employees, and Toshiba officials knew about it. And as you noticed, the car carrying the money wasn't given any armed escort, even though the sum was huge. So how could an outsider know about the whole plan? How could he know a transfer would happen that very day? On top of that, while the police were keeping the manager's house under surveillance, the threatening letters kept arriving, and no one knew where from. All these points put the bank manager under the spotlight, and everyone was talking about him being behind it. But the police couldn't prove it because there was no decisive evidence. The second suspect's story was tragic. His name was Takina Shoji, a taxi driver. He became a suspect simply because he lived near the bank and resembled the police sketch. And being a taxi driver, he had driving skills. But investigators couldn't find a shred of evidence against him. He wasn't arrested at first. The real problem came when his name leaked to the media. Journalists published articles with his photo and full name, claiming he was the robber, without any proof. All they relied on was his resemblance to the sketch and his home being near the bank. With so much coverage, police ended up arresting and questioning him just to calm public opinion. But in the end, they discovered he had a solid alibi proving he couldn't have been at the crime scene, so he was released. Unfortunately, his reputation was already destroyed. The whole country saw his picture in the newspapers. He was fired from his job, his family and friends abandoned him, and although he was proven innocent, he fell into deep depression and eventually took his own life. The third suspect was the strongest candidate of all, a 19-year-old named Sato Yoshiro. He was a member of a local gang, and his father was a policeman. He already had a criminal record for stealing cars. And as you know, the robber had switched cars multiple times during the heist. On top of that, Yoshiro was known for his love of motorcycles and advanced riding skills. His features also resembled the police sketch, and he couldn't provide any alibi for the time of the robbery. What made him even more suspicious was his father being a policeman, which meant he had access to inside knowledge about police motorcycles. With all these details, police had no reason to dismiss him as a suspect. But before they could arrest him, news came that he had drunk poison and died. Police said it looked like suicide. Perhaps he panicked when he realized they were closing in on him. The problem was no money or evidence was ever found in his home linking him to the crime. Another theory was that his father killed him to avoid disgrace being a policeman, or that his gang silenced him, since they might all have been involved and didn't want him spilling secrets. This seemed more likely, especially since investigators later found some gang members suddenly buying houses and cars. One member was even arrested with a huge amount of cash at home, possibly part of the stolen money. Still, there was no definitive evidence, just the closest theory the police reached. After 7 years, in December 1975, police officially closed the investigation without results. Then 20 years after the crime, in 1988, Japan's statute of limitations expired. Legally, the thief was cleared of all charges and could no longer be prosecuted. He could even reveal himself, but he never did. The case remains unsolved to this day. Now I want to know your opinion. Which suspect do you think was most likely the real thief? That was our story today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, please support the video with a like. And once again, for those seeing me for the first time, I'm Elon, and I share stories about everything strange and mysterious on Earth. The least you can do to support me is subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And if you love mysterious topics, be prepared for the next video about the most dangerous places on our planet. Peace, and see you in the next video. Next.